Welcome to Insight Tonight. Now, by any measure, autism is a subject that is not very well understood across the world, particularly in Kenya and particularly in our society, our African society and our Kenyan society for that matter. Tonight, we are joined by two women, exceptionally insightful women, women who have a stake in the matter, women who have insights on the matter, and one of whom wants to do something absolutely tremendous, all to raise awareness about autism. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you, my two guests tonight. Karibuni sana.
Thank you very much.
To my, is it extreme left? Directly opposite me is, of course, Dr. Kate Oyeke. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
You are a pediatric neurologist and vice chair of the East African Academy for Childhood Disability.
Yes.
You'll tell us a little bit more about what you do in a moment. But close to me is Professor Elizabeth Bukusi, who's an obstetrician and gynecologist, as well as an international researcher, among many, many, many other things. And one very important hat that you wear is that you're a grandmother.
Yes.
And it sounds very important to you.
It's extremely important to me. And I have a grandson who has been diagnosed to be on the autistic spectrum disorder.
Brilliant.
So that's why this is really important for me.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I know you have that's what I meant when I say you have a stake in the matter. You
I
have
do.
an axe to grind, a dog in the fight.
I absolutely do.
Brilliant, brilliant. Let's start with you, Dr. Oyeke. Or shall I call you Kate or Dr. Oyeke?
It works well.
Kate, what is it that you do at the association, at the academy? What is it that you people do over there?
So the East African Academy of Childhood Disabilities was started in 2014. And the whole idea was to bring together a group of experts who would be interested in looking after the neurodiverse. So we're not limited to autism spectrum, but that constitutes a large proportion or percentage of the children whose care we're interested in. What about it is the problem? It's the fact that we haven't had a lot of interest, let me say, in looking into the neurodiverse, autism being one of the big categories we have there. And we identified a big gap in the public's understanding, in the availability of infrastructure, in policy, that's available in terms of governance and things like those, in the training that's available in terms of the therapies and the supports, even with the family supports and the social aspects of it. And so we sort of looked into people who would have interest in all those categories and areas, from education involvement to doctors who at that time we didn't have developmental pediatricians. I still was in training. I wasn't in the academy at that point. But out of all that, so much has been done just by the raising of awareness. All right, and for people who are domiciled in all those categories, trying to work independently, but also forming networks. And so we are nested in the International Academy of Childhood Disabilities. And through those kinds of associations, we've learned from how other people did it in other developing countries. We've benefited from the advice of experts who are perhaps more knowledgeable than us at that time in those matters, but also we've taken in our own contexts. And we also incorporate insights from families. So it's an academy in that it brings together many thoughts and many ideas, and so that all those insights, we can grow and expand and learn from them. And our main activities are actually in advocacy, all right, and we want to drive research agendas in the neurodiverse space. So that's really where we come in as far as supporting all these activities.
One of the gaps you've mentioned is information, is knowledge. If we could give you an opportunity, just a few seconds, to break it down to our audience members who perhaps are wondering what you're saying when you say neurodiverse and autism. And they probably heard some of these names, Asperger's syndrome, autism, and whatnot. And maybe those are some of the more popular or well-known. Could you please break it down to us? Talk to us, what does it mean to be neurodiverse?
Maybe because we're limiting our discussions to autism spectrum, I'll talk about that. But I'll introduce neurodiversity as the understanding that being different or wired differently as far as how our brain interacts with our environment, all right, is something that we need to accept as normal, so that we stop labeling, certain ways of being as being less than. The idea is to foster inclusion, and that's one of the things that then we learned, that when we polled, the public, and not just the public, even people in the medical spaces, there still was that misconception of what it is that we're talking about when we speak of autism spectrum. So autism spectrum just means that you have a child who has, and we call it a spectrum 1 because no two children with autism spectrum are the same. So it's a spectrum because there's a lot and there's extreme ends. And so what you need to diagnose a person with autism spectrum is to have difficulties in social communication or social
difficulties
interaction.
in social interaction, social communication.
Language differences, all right? So maybe not the use of language in the communicative sense that everyone else does. So that would be the neurotypical people. What we all understand is what language looks and sounds like to us.
What people are calling normal.
Exactly, normal. So normal makes it sound as though everyone else is not abnormal.
Right.
And that, in a sense, is not pro-inclusion, because you want to create an other and a separateness that doesn't actually help in terms of integrating. And the third thing that you need is repetitive actions or activities or movements that to some people may seem purposeless, all right? But in actual fact, they may be attempts at interacting with their environments. It's just that we, the neurotypicals, quote unquote, might not actually understand those aspects. And so it's that difference in being that we want to now call the autism spectrum.
All right. And Professor, I want to bring you in here. You've probably in your career have brought to the world or helped to usher in thousands of children. You've been a grandmother for a long time. Thousands of children. One of the things she's talking about is even just how we interact with some of these differences that exist. What have you seen in terms of reaction of parents when they receive a child who's perhaps different from what we consider to be, I like that word, neurotypical, there's different strokes for different folks. What have you seen in the reception of this?
So let me start by saying not thousands. Maybe I look a little older than I really am, but
I imagine you're very good at what you do.
Well, very good at what I do in the years that I did it, though I've focused more on research in the last part of my career. But the reality is the people like me who work at the point of delivering the babies won't see it then. It's Dr. Kate, the pediatricians, who will pick it up.
Right.
Because right when a child is born, at that point in time, you won't be able to tell that they're different.
Right.
There will just be a little baby who will...
Bundle of joy.
Yes, a bundle of joy, and we hand them over. We get the joy and the privilege of delivering and then handing it over to someone else who has to do all the work.
Right.
But I think, as Dr. Kate would probably tell you, what parents may notice in the early times, and it depends on whether this is their first child or another child. They may notice, if it's their second child, they might notice some differences. If it's not, then they will not realize it. And just what she said, their speech may be a little bit delayed, or they may act a little bit differently. Like with my grandson, I think one of the things that his parents mentioned was that he seemed to struggle with the normal sleeping hours. He wasn't getting into a routine where he would sleep and then wake up. When one expected him to develop a cycle of sleeping once he was 7, 8 months old, he would still wake up in the middle of the night. He would wake up at 1 a.m. and he's completely awake. So the normal rhythms that one would expect, that you'd soothe him and get him to go back to school.
Doesn't work.
To sleep, he wouldn't sleep. He's completely awake and ready to go for the day. And so his sleep cycles were off. So it's during that developmental period that they may start noticing. And then we noticed that he wasn't picking up the kind of sound and languages that you expect a baby to be making. He wasn't doing that. And then the eye contact, that he wouldn't necessarily hold contact with his caregivers, his parents in the same way. So that's when you start to realize maybe something is different.
Something's different.
Yeah.
Why do you want to climb the mountain?
So first, let me give a disclosure. I've climbed before.
Oh, brilliant.
But this particular climb, it's to raise awareness. Climbing mountains is difficult. It's challenging. It's not something that, those of us who may perhaps enjoy the outdoor may do it just because we love it, but it does take something out of you, and it does take effort. It's difficult.
It's tremendously difficult.
It is difficult, and it is a challenge, and there are risks to it. But I think this is the challenge that parents who have children with on the autistic spectrum disorder or other neurodiverse children face, that it's a different world. Indeed. It's a different space. Every day there's a challenge. When you climb the mountain, you talk about it's one step at a time. Each step is difficult. Each day is unpredictable. You wake up and you think the weather's good, then suddenly it's raining. Or sometimes, like now, it's snowing. And so each difficulty, to me, represents the kind of challenge that parents face, but even more, the children themselves. That it's a world that they're born into and the world is different. And we don't seem to understand them. And we don't seem to get the fact that...
incredibly frustrating.
Frustrating. They want to be accepted just like anyone else. Their world is different. The way they see the world is different from the way we see our world. One of the things that always strikes me when I have time to spend with my grandson is that he makes me realize how much noise there is in the world. Because I will not hear the sound of an aeroplane until I see him holding his ears. I will not even hear the sound of a pump going on to pump water into a system until I see him covering his ears. Then I realize, oh, these are things that I take for granted that are not the same for him.
Do you know what's really fascinating is how your mountain, Mount Kenya, is now, I mean, represents all the different things that everyone is dealing with, from the child to the caregivers and so on. Everyone's trying to climb a mountain. And so perhaps at this point, just before you come in, Kate, could you give us an insight in what it takes for somebody to climb a mountain, as somebody who's done it before?
As someone who's done it before, it requires resilience and determination. It requires being willing to face difficult moments and to keep going. It requires saying that I'll do just one more step. When you get to the point that you want to quit and you're uncomfortable and you wish to just let it all go, that you say one more step and you take that step.
I mean, it's easy to quit, isn't it? I mean,
it's very easy.
And it's not even just because the odds that you're facing are sometimes life-threatening. You know, I read an account of some of the people that climbed the Everest, and they're talking about literally every step you take is against your instinct to just want to quit. And you're saying this is how people feel when you're raising a child like this, or you are yourself the person who's different. This is every day.
It absolutely is, because it's not just about being, whether you're physically fit or physically able. There's altitude and there's weather.
Everything is conspiring against
you, and it's unpredictable and it's challenging. And every step you take, it's because the air is getting, there's less and less oxygen, and so it's harder. So even the normal things you'd push your body to do become more challenging. And I think that's exactly how these children feel, and that's exactly how their caregivers feel. That you're going against the tide. You're swimming upstream.
Okay. Heshima kubwa sana. Kate, talk to me about that. As I was preparing for this interview, I spoke to somebody who said they didn't know about their child until the child was about 6 or 7 years old and was allegedly falling behind in the so-called milestones, the conventional milestones, the ones we know about. Talk to me about how the Academy plugs into this gap of awareness, of screening, of this kind of knowledge, this kind of information out there. Talk to me about that.
So I'm very privileged to be part of this academy. I myself am a pediatric neurologist, so it is in my area of training to address any kind of conditions that involve the functioning of the brain, especially the developing brain, the brains of children. And in that academy, we also have a developmental pediatrician who is the primary expert in the management of autism spectrum disorders. And we also have the benefit of having rehabilitative assistants. We have speech therapists, we've got occupational therapists, we've got teachers of special education. And so we have a breadth of experience that allows us to be able to look at a child or a family, and we're very, very much pro family-centered approaches just to address everything, not just the medical aspects with the diagnosis, but also the educational planning, the social functioning. And so in doing so, we go about doing webinars that are open to the public, because we do have a social media presence as well. And we also plug into the other networks that we have. So for example, the International Academy of Childhood Disabilities, the World Rehabilitation Alliance under WHO, and several other groups that are allied in that mission. And it goes beyond just the work we do as EACD, because individually we're also in spaces where we can have impact. So for example, our founders have done the most research, I think, in the country or in the region, in terms of mapping, for example, who has autism, where are they, where are the numbers. So research is a big thing, and many of our members are active in that. And we've also spread our wings. So we're not just in Kenya, we're also in Tanzania, in Rwanda, in Ethiopia, and so that's all happening. And myself personally, even in my place of work, I do the pro bono, outreaches, but also in my place of employment, screening is part of what I do. And in addition to that, I'm actually actively involved in also training pediatric neurologists, and this is based off of the work and advocacy of the people that went before us through the academy or assisted by the academy in terms of lobbying and saying, look here, we don't have the experts, we don't have developmentalists, we don't have pediatric neurologists, we don't have occupational therapists, set up the training facilities for all that. So it's a very, very broad portfolio. And so because we're very few, it's a small committee of members, we're basically a handful, but it means we capitalize on our contacts and the people that we know, and we exchange knowledge, and we learn from what did they do in Tanzania, can it work for us? Right now we're engaged in an activity that's looking to map the genes, just to see if there's other confinders that might be unique to the African population. It's also trying to contextualize for the children that we deal with, because a lot of the work that's been done in autism is information that is borrowed from countries that are diversely very different from us. And sometimes what may work for other people may not work for us, not because it shouldn't, but because they've used their data to inform their practices.
Right.
So research is something that we feel will strongly impact in a big way the work that we do.
What do you need to be able to do your work better? What are you lacking right now?
That's a big ask, because there's a lot that can be done.
Give me a list.
And let's speak positively, all right? I would ask for a shopping list, but really it's about getting people to the table. I think the interest is there. I see the goodwill that Kenyans have at every level, and I'd start with leadership. And I'd say at a policy maker level is to understand that when you don't make things inclusive for everybody, all right, you make it difficult for people to be self-sufficient. And that's at the end point what every parent or any person wants to be able to survive in the environment that they find themselves in. So we have to recognize that the way people on the autism spectrum experience the environment is quite different, all right? And so it's about making that infrastructure inclusive, all right, and moving away from ableism and saying, you can't get onto a wheelchair, so you're the problem. Whereas the problem is that there's stairs and there's no ramp. So it's about a shift in how we manipulate our environment to be able to understand or make it easier for other people to experience it in a way that's fruitful and beneficial to them. It's about getting special ed teachers, and that involves roping in the Ministry of Education. And there is a Department of Child Disability that's trying to do some work there. The Ministry of Health is also critical in that aspect. It's also looking into parliamentarians and looking into policy that can make it on paper and make it a constitutional right. So we do say that every child does have access to education, a right to education, a right to safety. But actually, children on the autism spectrum, if for example, I go wandering and I'm a 16-year-old boy, I might be nabbed for jaywalking, exactly. Yeah. And that means it doesn't take into account the unique circumstances that this individual has to grapple with. So it's looking at all those aspects.
Right. Now, we understand that this is a massive conversation and all of us are just kind of dipping our toe in it. But I'd like to give an opportunity for members of our audience to be able to connect, not just with you, but with your association and everyone that can offer some sort of help or insight. Where can they find you? How can they reach out?
Thank you. So we're on social media through Facebook. We have a Facebook page, and it's just labeled the Eastern African Academy of Childhood Disabilities. We also have a Twitter/X handle, and through that, they're actually open to the public. We do have a website that's currently under development. It's being worked on, but we've had it up for the last 3 years. So that's really how we can be reached.
Are you okay with people actually coming to find you? You said you do some consultancy work, or maybe at your clinic. Where can people find you? So
I'm practicing at the Aga Khan University Hospital in the pediatric unit, and I run a frequent neurology clinic and a neurodevelopmental clinic as well. And the webinars that the Academy does. So people, you can find her at the Aga Khan Hospital. Thank you very much. Professor, when are you doing the climb? What can we expect? How can we support? You want to raise awareness. How can we plug into that?
We hope to climb between the 28th of this month and to complete our climb probably on the 1st, I believe, of this month. And how can people help? I think by talking about it, that's one particular thing. If you'd like to climb, maybe you can let us know if you'd like to join us and come up the mountain and climb as well. That may be an idea.
Are you saying that to me or to Kenyans?
You're very welcome to come. Listen, but if there are Kenyans who definitely want to climb, this would be the week to tell us that you want to be added to the list of those who will be climbing to raise awareness for autism.
Brilliant. I believe some of us it would be like adding our list to the list of people to die. Because climbing, the best thing of climbing is a massive tree. And I've come down quite quicker than I went up. But I thank you for what you're doing. I should say it's a very difficult thing to do, and for a very, very good cause, one that is actually quite close to home for you. Going forward, will there be other events like this to raise awareness? And again, how can people connect with you? How can people just join the effort? Perhaps we're not very good climbers. What can we do apart from talking about it? What else can we do? Can we donate? Can we be part of a broader effort?
I think providing support to the Academy would be the best way of being able to really provide support.
Okay.
And as Dr. Kate has said, while we are raising awareness for autism, there are other types of childhood disability and different areas in which there is a need for support and raising awareness, just so that more can be done. There are children out there who aren't able to get perhaps adequate support because of a challenge with resources. Even simple things like being able to ensure that a child can be potty trained. They will likely train a little later because their language skills may not be as well developed. That may be a challenge for them getting to school. And as Dr. Kate had said, ensuring schools can provide inclusivity and allow these children into the spaces that they need to be, because many of them are brilliant. Really, really brilliant. Yeah. But it's just that they don't have the opportunity for their brilliance to come through because they're not getting the support they need to allow them to develop well.
Right. Tell you what, for both of you, we've started a conversation right here. It doesn't get any better than, hey, I'm climbing a mountain. Why? Because I want to raise awareness for autism. So now our conversation has started. We will keep tabs on you. We will climb the mountain with you in spirit, as well as capture all the moments. And we will bring you back to tell the story of how the climb was. Absolutely, I assure you, we will have you back, both of you, a matter of fact, and we'll have a much broader conversation, possibly with other members of the Academy, and I hope with a little bit more time to dwell on it. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for having us. This is really important,
absolute pleasure.
And we appreciate the opportunity.
Asante sana. Thank you for coming. Earlier this week, good people, we had a conversation on perhaps the same subject, but from a different angle, and we're looking at just how best to keep the conversation going. And I'm so glad you people have joined us this week. TV47 is the home of untold stories, and one of the untold stories that we do, we try to focus on is things like this, things that require a much broader platform. And we're here for you. Whatever you need, we'll be happy to. We will climb the mountain with you, Doctor. We will climb the mountain with you. All right? Thank you, good people, for watching. I can see Rogers, someone says Rogers needs some help. I think Rogers will be in touch with you. generally think Rogers will be in touch with you. Somebody else here who's joining us from, somebody called Eddie. Eddie says he thinks some of his relatives may have, may need your assistance. And somebody else here, what do you say, Midi? We're completely out of time, I understand. Wait. Thomas says they've climbed Mount Kenya before and they would like to join you. Please expect Thomas to be there.
Okay.
Thomas, go with my blessings. Please, as you climb up the mountain, climb on my behalf. I will be climbing other things in the meantime, but thank you so much. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate you. I know it's just a small part of a much broader conversation, but we appreciate you making the time.
Thank you.
Good people, we take a short break. When we come back, VAR is on your screens, sporting supercharged, turbocharged action ready for your consumption. My name is Victor Muyakane. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Good night and God bless you.
Na safari hii katika Mfahamu Kiongozi tutakuletea viongozi aina mbalimbali.
Nikuwe na Nisani kama 10 na pia nikuwe menua minibus. Minibus nikoniwa.